Okay, so Walmart put out this commercial, I think 2016. It was Walmart showing off their new delivery service. So one of the great things about this commercial is that it gives you a real chance to be able to practice what you've understood as marketing professionals. So this is a commercial about segmentation by channels, all right? So there are signals that this commercial is going to be screaming at you that it's looking for a particular group. And I want you to keep your ears and your eyes open, and we'll talk about it after we finish. So here we go. It's the future, Mike. I'm not Mike.
Oh, don't worry, he calls everyone Michael.
Easter egg. That's Sam Walton's original Ford that he drove across the United States when he was building Walmart. Okay. So pretty cool. People who put this commercial together. So I'll give 5 bonus points if anybody knows what the name of the song was and who sung it. It's Cars. Okay, that's the name of the song. It's by Gary Newman. It was in the 80s. It was new wave. Really awesome song. Gary Newman was awesome. Anyway, so this commercial is screaming at you with icons of a certain era. So what era or what decades are we talking about where these particular commercial or these symbols come from? Yes.
Late 90s, early 2000s.
Right in that era. You could even say late 80s and the mid 90s. You got that right. Okay, so we're looking at we're looking at Jurassic Park, we're looking at the Flintstones, we're looking at Scooby Snacks, we're looking at Back to the Future. So these icons are basically set to segment to a particular generation. So what is the age of that generation now? Where would those ages be? How old would these people be now?
Mid-30s.
Mid-30s. All right. So think demographically mid-30s. All right. Think about the individuals in their mid-30s. What would you say that their life is like at this time? What would you say they are? Kids. Yes, exactly. They're married. They have kids. And anybody who has kids, you'll understand this, is one of the worst kind of experiences is taking them into a place like Walmart. All right. You'll be there. All right. Anyway, so What this commercial does, and it does it brilliantly, I really enjoy the way it does this, is it segments those particular people who need to shop because they have no choice. Everybody needs to shop, but they don't want to get out of the car. And this is a classic example of how we segment by place. Okay? So I want you to think now, okay, look, all of y'all are now juniors or seniors. You've had experiences, you've worked in your professions, whatever they may be, and you now have that level of knowledge. You can take that knowledge and start doing, secondary processes, making conclusions in your own mind. What I did is nothing magic here. I did the same things that you all would. I encourage you to start looking at this. The Super Bowl commercials will start coming up, and I love to take those apart as well. Think about who they appeal to. What is the purpose? Remember that when we're talking marketing, the three most important steps are segmentation, where we take the market and we define it into unique identifiable groups, all right? Targeting, which is where we decide which of those groups we're going to go after. And then finally, positioning. And positioning is creating this unique place in the consumer's mind relative to the competition. One of the big parts about positioning that everybody kind of forgets is we forget that positioning has to be a unique place. Because what happens if your product is no different from anyone else's? If your product is no different from anyone else's, how do consumers choose? What's the number one way they choose? The easiest one. Pardon?
Price, maybe.
Price, exactly. Exactly. They choose by price. And it is that uniqueness, that specialness, like I said in Thursday, that makes the Dell machines with a 6% gross margin and the Apple machines with a 35% gross margin. Okay? All right, super. So, without further ado, let us dive into segmentation. So, why is segmentation so important? First off, and always, and the most important thing always to understand is that the whole function of marketing in all 4 Ps is to start with the end user. Define the consumer, define their needs and wants, satisfy those needs and wants at a reasonable rate of return. And I got to leave that sentence off now that I'm PhD. The end user holds the power of the purse. We need to be able to satisfy the end user's demand. Otherwise, we have no product to sell. When we define a product, we're defining what the consumers want to consume. When we define place, we define how they want to buy it and how they want to use it. And so, of the W's, this is the H of the W's. Channels is about how consumers wish to consume their products. That also comes down to post-purchase evaluations as well. That also means that when we're thinking of the product, we have to think about the satisfaction afterwards. And can we still deliver value to them in a reasonable way? I buy Michelin tires. One of my tires is flat. And they patched it, but you know what? My concerns, especially for my family, riding on those tires overrides everything. So I went online to Michelin. Now, in the traditional way in which services would be delivered, I would be sitting on the phone for 15 or 20 minutes and I'd be listening to music as I have my speakerphone on. But I choose much more much more quickly to do an online chat, because an online chat is just that much faster. This is a channel decision about how to deliver service, and it provides much more satisfaction for me. And that's because they looked at the end users. Now, don't get me wrong. Tech service like this, and because I've been on the other side and I've seen what they've done, I mean, that allows them to take care of 10 people at a time. Nothing wrong with that as long as they take care of me. So just remember that how things are delivered are vitally important to the end user. If we understand the nature of the end user's demand, ultimately we can provide them value. But we also have to realize is that end users have varying preferences. It is the way that we output services in the channel environment that help us define the delivery of value to each consumer. That's the way I want to do it. My father would always want to talk to a person and nothing else. You have your own way. We all do. And each one of us has a unique defined consumer segment, and it's our ideas about which are the best ones that we can tackle, ultimately to determine how we go about building our channels. And so how consumers want the services, how they want them channeled to them, is how we go about building a marketing channel system. And so this is a definition that's definitely going to be important for the test, and it's important for you to understand. We define those ways that we deliver our services as a service output. The service output are the elements that describe how the product can be bought. This is also to say how we deliver all of the 9-channel functions. As an individual, me going into a Walmart by myself, I just grab and go. And I do that especially because if I'm looking for convenience goods, I would look for the quickest and the earliest convenience. Generally, Walmart is not the best place to do that because Walmart can be very inconvenient. But if I happen to be on that side of the town, I will. As my requirements ramp up, spending more money, I'm taking greater risk, then I give it greater thought. My service output requirements are much different. So when I got tenure, for my reward, I wanted to buy a 75-inch UHD 4K Samsung. And my wife said yes before she saw how big it was. Okay. The first time she got it, she had to sit in the back of our living room. She loves it. She wouldn't do anything, but I had to get that first. I went through many, many different ways of finding the right machine, especially because I was spending a lot of money. Okay. So it's beautiful, folks. I love it. Nothing more to say about it. But the search requirements that I had in the service outputs that I was looking for were much different than the service outputs and requirements that I were needing if I were just simply going in and buying, buying a USB cable. Okay, so service outputs. So what am I talking about? The service outputs are basically going to be 6. Don't have to worry about this. We're going to go past that slide. And we're going to talk about end user segmentation by service outputs. So the way these slides are generated is you'll see all service outputs at one time. And we'll talk about them one at a time. And so this is the list. But you don't have to scribble on this list because the next slides are going to show them one at a time. So the way that we start this out is that we think of all things being equal. If we thought about every product being the same, if those products were in a market that were considered those products as commodities, then if we can't segment by unique physical characteristics, we can also try to segment by the how we deliver them. If I'm talking about USB-C cables as an example, they're pretty much generic, all right, other than the superior quality ones. But there's no surprise that if you go in a convenience store and you're looking at USB cables, they're significantly higher in price. Guess why? Because they become what's called an emergency good. And when they're emergency goods, money doesn't necessarily figure into it. That's why the prices at convenience stores are generally higher, because you're paying for convenience. Sorry, I'm going on. That's also coming under waiting and delivery time, but we'll talk about that later. So the first thing, bulk breaking. So we have a timeshare in Myrtle Beach, but we don't go to Myrtle Beach anymore because I'm tired of waking up at 3 a.m. as a motorcycle goes running by. So we actually go 15 miles south to what's called Surfside Beach. Beautiful place. Wonderful beaches. Anyway, whenever we travel, my wife, always the organizer, so much better at it than I am. She carries a kit of things that come with us. Dishwashing liquid, dishwashing pods. Even though we may expect it there, to carry it, and I'm the same way, alleviates a lot of the difficulty of travel. Bulk breaking means, believe it or not, that a small bottle of Palmolive this big can cost the same amount as a Palmolive bottle that big. Why? Because consumers ideally want their goods broken in to smaller and smaller lots so they don't carry unnecessary inventory. Breaking bulk means buying in large sections and reducing them to smaller and smaller and smaller sections. Consumers break the goods that they have down into smaller sections as well, and we desire those things because we achieve a greater satisfaction. Candy, soft drinks. There's a magic number now that started about a decade ago, where candy and soft drinks, they like to print on the can that they are under a certain number. You want to guess what it is? On candy and soft drinks, their serving size, they want it to be under a certain number. That's close, because they want to be under that. But the key thing they want to do is they want to be under 100 calories. They want to be able to say 90 calories or less or something like that. They've even gone so far as to take large candy bars, okay, and put them in 2 sections and then say serving unit is 90 calories when the whole thing is, maybe more. My favorite is the M&Ms, the tear and like I'm going to share my M&Ms, okay? But yeah, the tear and share. You're going to share them, right? I buy everything for my daughters. Are you kidding? I don't want them to buy that. So anyway, the small lots reduces the need for end users to carry unnecessary inventory, and therefore it is much value. Just in time, as I talked about the very first day, creates the enormous advantage of not needing to have inventory. The more bulk breaking the channel does, the smaller the lot sizes and the higher the service output and ultimately the higher value. Consumers are much more willing to buy smaller lots than they are larger ones. And this is the essence of what Costco does. It takes the service output of breaking bulk, instead of it being in the hands of the intermediaries, and puts it in the hands of the end users. And the end users break bulk because end users perform channel functions. I'll say it over and over again, maybe every class. You're gonna be sick of it, be saying it in your lot, in your sleep. End users perform channel functions, and when they break bulk, they get a discount. So breaking bulk. So this is that example. When renting a vacation house, family likely to carry a small bottle. You're willing to pay a higher amount per ounce? Absolutely. And here's the thing, the smaller lot size, the more you consume, the greater the value. There's also another reason, by the way, that they take a 12-ounce Coke and make it an 8-ounce Coke, is quite simply is that we know in the consumption of any drink, the highest rate of satisfaction happens at the beginning of the drink and not the end. And we find that instead of drinking one large 16-ounce bottle, if a consumer drinks 2 8-ounce bottles, they achieve a greater satisfaction. Just psychology, all right? So the more the end user consumes, the more utility they get in the smaller sizes and the greater the satisfaction. Selling in smaller package sizes is much more acceptable. And so this is an example of breaking bulk. The next is spatial convenience. This is what convenience stores. So traditionally in the United States, up until the 1930s, or actually the 1940s, every neighborhood had a neighborhood store. The neighborhood store generally had fresh goods. They also had consumables. They also had shelf-stable items, and they were neighborhood convenience stores. We saw in the 30s the start of the supermarket with Piggly Wiggly coming along. And then in the late 40s and the 50s, we started seeing mega stores where you actually had shopping centers, and that drew people to them. However, we are in this thing that Alvin Toffler called demassification, in which the market has become more and more decentralized, and so that consumers are more close to their goods. This is also one of the pretty decent things that smartphones do, is that even goods that can be considered not in our geographic area can consider or feel to be close. And so spatial convenience, not only in location, but also in delivery, increases the satisfaction. It reduces the transportation elements and serve. Now, I've also written articles called Closer Than You Think. I wrote this in my second year in PhD school, where I found that consumers, especially when it came to taking trips to large locations, such as a Bass Pro Shop or IKEA, generally perceive distances shorter than they actually are. In other words, the trip itself makes consumers desire to get there, and the trip goes much, much shorter. But those are specialty shops. In a general kind of environment where consumers want to get their goods, they're very happy to get it at the closest location possible. If you combine this with breaking bulk and spatial convenience, it gives you an idea why a 20-ounce bottle of Coke in a supermarket, in a convenience store, a gas station, can cost $2, And you can walk right across the street to Lowe's and get a 1 liter bottle of Coke for 99 cents. It makes a difference because it's a smaller size, greater satisfaction, and then also convenience. So, waiting time is not always where you don't, how do I put this? You're not upset if you have to wait too long, depending on the risk of the good that you're getting. Waiting time is the time that the end user must wait between ordering a good and receiving the. So I built my PC, or I didn't build my PC, I had somebody build. There's a website called Build Redux, REDUX. You can buy the pieces online at market prices. And for $99, they will put it together for you and give you a 1-year warranty and do all the testing for you. And like I've said before in the last class, building can be a pain. Not only that, but they guarantee it and put a warranty on it. And for that reason, I waited 8 weeks to get my machine. But I was okay with it, barely. Now, when I get it delivered, my willingness to wait drops dramatically. So the intensity of demand, and especially the risk in terms of money, also the complexity of the good, those things make me much more willing to wait. However, in post-sales service, I cannot wait. Or let's just say any amount of time of waiting is too much. So, service contracts. Have you ever wondered how service contracts, so if a hospital buys an MRI machine, those machines can anywhere be from $500,000 to $1 million. And you're willing to wait from the point of production to the point of delivery, even up to 6 months to get exactly what you want. However, the amount of time that an MRI is down, because they run MRIs 24 hours a day, because that's the way you get the maximum benefit out of these machines, can cost the hospital in generated revenue around $50,000 a day, even higher. So it comes a situation with post-service that money is no object. By the way, they price service contracts, on-site service less than 4 hours is generally about 20% of the original purchase price. So calculate that in your head. If it's a $500,000 machine, you put another $100,000 on service. And that's whether or not you come there or not. So, and usually you never sell one of these machines, or from what I know, GE does not allow these machines to be sold unless there's a service contract connected to it. It just makes sense. And so waiting time. Waiting time is one of those great variables that segmentation, depending on who we are and the equipment that we have, can be long or it can be non-existent. So this is it, what I talked about. An ultrasound machine. You're willing not to pay a higher price for quick delivery, but the demand for quick repair service may be intense, it is intense. And not only is there willing to pay that premium on a service contract, like I said, it's expected. And if I'm a smart salesperson and I'm selling ultrasound machines, you're not walking out the door without a service contract. All right, so we get all these together, and it's important to understand that the service outputs can be combined together to create things. So this is an example There are major beer manufacturers in Mexico sell through grocery stores, through restaurants, liquor stores. But the difficulty with that is generally the prices tend to be overall much more expensive than the average middle or lower income individual in Mexico can. There's an important concept that I want you to understand. It's called the service supplied is less than the service demanded. Many times consumers will want service, but the service that they get is inadequate for the end users. Contrariwise, there's another way that the service supply can be greater than what the consumer demands. And what will happen ultimately is that businesses will falter, and we'll talk about those concepts. But what I want to say this is when the service supplied is less than the service demanded, people find a way. And so what you find is that in large apartments in Mexico, the people within the apartments will get together. One person will pool all their resources. They'll buy a keg of beer, or what we call a half barrel, and then resell it in the neighborhood who can't afford a six-pack. They bring their own bottles. This is very much also in Russia. Russia does the same thing. In every town, there will be one individual who will collect together money. They will create vodka, and then they will sell it by the liter, and you just bring your own liter. It's amazing how things find a way. When a standard retail channel cannot meet service output demands, people find a way. So Dr. Alvinson is writing this very interesting paper about Sweden and other places in the EU that are going to a cashless economy. In other words, not using cash. And if you read the way it was written, when we first started talking about it, I said to myself, it's not going to run because people are not perfect in things that happen. And the vast majority of the, extemporaneous conversations that she's been looking at are pretty bad. People need cash, all right? And the first thing I said is you're probably going to have a black market come out of it. And yes, you have black markets, and these things happen when consumers are not supplied, or the service that is demanded is less than the service that's supplied. Great example is just look at our drug laws over the last 50 years, okay? So anyway, bulk breaking, spatial convenience, delivery time, they all kind of come together. So there are two things, these two concepts that when we were talking about some of the things that groups do, is the concept of variety and assortment. I want you to think of condiments. Say that carefully. Mustard, mayonnaise, relish, all of those in that general category, which are considered whatever you want to think of that make that burger that much better. Avioli, you name it. All of those unique things that come under the general category of condiments are what is considered variety. So if we look at the different items or different categories, so mayo, mustard, ketchup, relish, avioli, these would be the assortments, okay? The different classes of goods that constitute a product offering. Assortment is the different number that is in that list. Okay? And so variety means the breadth, assortment means the depth. It's often said about Walmart is that they have everything but one of everything. It's interesting because Amazon originally was created from a concept that we used to be talked about years ago. And the concept was the fact that I could have basically an assortment, or excuse me, a variety that's 100,000 wide and 1 inch deep. Walmart gets away with a wide variety but a limited assortment because, quite simply, they offer a trade-off in price. And consumers are perfectly happy with that. However, in a store that's dedicated to those goods, a Publix, a Harris Teeter, a Lowe's, those places, their bread and butter or their success is a wide assortment. Those are the reasons that consumers will go there instead of going to Walmart. And so here's an example of where segmentation comes in. The segment that traditionally, or let's just say habitually shops at Walmart is very much different than the one that shops at any of the others. I come from Louisiana and Mississippi. There is a mayonnaise there called Blue Plate. That is my favorite. And I go to Publix and I go to Lowe's because that's where I find them. And I learned in North Carolina, you do not argue about mayonnaise because it'll come to blows, okay? And I love peace, all right? So Duke's is awesome, all right? You knew exactly what I meant, didn't you? So anyway, yeah, I like these. Shut up. Okay, wide variety. So this is kind of an interesting idea. So Hot Topic is generally brands for individuals thinking of consumers under 30. Hot Topic targets those who are teen or those who still want to be. And what they look for is they look for making money on fads, all right? So fads, if you don't know, are those things that are very popular for at least 4 to 8 weeks, and then they just die out. The problem with that is, especially fashion happens much quicker, or excuse me, much slower than 8 weeks. So the fashions that are going to be looked at right now are the fashions that are going to be in March and April. That's what they're buying for in the future, because that's the way. And I don't have to say that, you know, especially department stores and stores where fashion is critical. I mean, getting it right is absolutely vital. It tends to be why fashion tends to be, in terms of taking risk, tend to be risk averse. They try to make sure that they achieve success. Hot Topic throws that away. Hot Topic will put something out in 2 weeks. They'll try to hit at the moment that the fad is successful, and then it flames out and dies away, and you find it in the bargain bin in a couple of weeks. And so this is a combination of the right assortment, fast delivery, and with a great service output combination. I accidentally got pulled in there one time with my daughters. Bad idea. But I get it. You know, as a marketing person, I think they're genius. Customer service. If you cannot do anything well, or let's just say your products are not that unique, and I'm thinking of tires because I'm looking at tires right now. The one thing that you can do is deliver good service, especially now. I mean, when I get good service, I'm just bamboozled, all right? Bad enough I have to give a tip when I buy something online. And I think that's normal now. But anyway, when I get good service, oh my God, do I tip? And I didn't generally be a generous tipper. I was a waiter myself, so I try to, be good back. But the impact is important. One of those groups that isn't listened to a lot is streaming services. And yet DirecTV still maintains, in this brave new world, a pretty good reputation. And the way that they do that, by the way, is that their service reps, they don't churn and burn churn and burn, by the way, is a salesmanship topic. It's when you hire new salespeople, you run them through the ring until they can't go anymore, and then you let them go. Well, they don't have that churn rate at DirecTV because they do their best to try to invest in their direct support. So if you get DirecTV, or if you're a DirecTV tech support, you get all that DirecTV has. They'll give you every channel, give you everything. They give you time to invest in it. And that's an investment ultimately pays off with customer service. When I worked at Omni Computer Store in Lafayette, we used to subscribe to about 24 different magazines, and we kept a library up, and the geeks just loved to come in and browse our library. But you do that because that made us different from the other places that were out there. You can exceed your expectations if you're willing to go the extra mile. And now, especially, you bet. Has anyone ever been in a Cabela's or a Bass Pro Shop and you got out? How long were you in there?
Wow.
A while. How long? 2-3 hours. Yeah. It's about anybody else? So, oh yeah, you were there when? Just curious.
I went over winter break. I go with my dad every time I go.
Oh, okay. Does your
Yeah.
dad make a pilgrimage of it, or?
No, we love it. It's like
Okay.
a whole outing.
Yeah, it is.
We'll spend a whole day in there.
Yeah, it's not unusual. My wife, Swedish, we've gone to IKEA. She's been there with her parents for 8 hours. I am not lying, okay? And we owned half of IKEA by the time she got out, okay? I mean, it is more than just a place, it is an experience. So, one of the things that Cabela's kind of do is that men, we don't hate to shop, but we tend to be in our nature. There's this great discussion about men are hunter-gatherers. It's part of DNA. We given a task, we go, we get it, we get out. It's just the way we are, all right? But what Cabela's does is they create natural scenes. They create a situation, an environment. So to give you an idea, Cabela's and Bass Pro Shop are now merged together. So, did anybody read about the guy who decided to take a swim in the bass tank? That's gross. I mean,
You see the video?
Yeah, so Bass, one of the things that they do at a Bass Pro Shop is they'll take a giant fish tank, okay, 8 feet high walls, all right, to hundreds of thousands of gallons, and put bass in it. And of course, you can see through it, and you can actually watch people cast and catch the bass. You can actually watch it. Well, I don't know what he was, but he decided to get undressed and go for a swim. Okay, you can look it up. It's gross. I will never eat a bass out of that tank. Anyway, so, but that's one of the things that they do. The Bass Pro Shop in Baton Rouge is out on O'Neill Lane. And when they built it, they dug out this great pit to build the foundation. They built a 3 acre lake so that if you wanted to try out a boat, you could actually get in the boat and go around the lake. So you could actually test the boat out before you would not believe the line of people. It's like Disneyland, okay? I mean, people going out to try out the boats. It's genius, all right? And that's an example of delivering customer service, and it's a very appealing thing, and it's extremely successful, okay? Oh yeah, that was gross. Anyway, I'm gonna say this, and this, you'll probably find a question on this, maybe it's a multiple choice, but information sharing to me is the most important of all of the service outputs, especially now. The education we provide to our end users increases pre-purchase and post-purchase evaluation satisfaction. I've had this I had this argument and discussion many times. Of course, you got to be very careful about how much information you give out, because ultimately you can lose power that way. And we'll talk about that in chapter 10. But the sharing of information, especially if you're kind of a tech guy like I am, or a tech weenie, and wants information, can be the most vital thing that you can give out. So, information sharing with a purpose, leading consumers to a positive evaluation, is what's known as solutions retail. In 84, I lived in Lafayette, Louisiana for 5 years. And when I lived in Lafayette and I was the store manager there, it's a big oil center. It's also a lot of engineers there. So engineers, to be able to do their graphs and all like this, used to or use Hewlett Packard. They were called E-size plotters. So the plotter was basically 5 feet wide, and an E-size plot would be a drawing that was 5 feet wide by 6 feet long, 60 inches by 72 inches. And so the way that it would work is the paper would move back and forth through the plotter, and these pens would be used to draw the actual diagram. They use inkjet printing now, but the pens would move at like 40 gravities. It would move incredibly fast. That plotter by itself cost $15,000 to $20,000. Intergraph or any of the software packages would generally run around $80,000 to $100,000. Around this time in 82, 83, a corporation in San Francisco called AutoCAD came up with a computer-aided design package that you could buy for around $3,000. And so we put together these solution packages of AutoCAD, and at that time, oh gosh, what was the name of the computer? I can't, Victor, that's it. Victor had these special machines that could do the engineering. You hook that with an E-size plotter, you could have a solution within about $25,000 and save $75,000 and be able to do all of that work at the same time. That was a solution retailer. We provided a solution for a problem. And this is once again thinking in a segmentation, thinking about your consumers and putting together something that achieves value. So you'll see this also, by the way, when you go in the Lowe's Home Improvement Center, you'll see this on a chalkboard. They'll do something like there's a 30-minute class on how to lay tile or how to spackle, those kind of things, all right? They talk about Microsoft and HP doing it the same way. Information sharing can be in a generic way, but it can also be in a solutions way as well. Now, before we leave today, I want to note that there's one thing that wasn't up there and is not considered. Price. Price is not considered a service output. Price is what is considered the exchange to receive the service output. All right. And yet price is vitally important because price ultimately is our value on what we achieve from the service outputs. And so we have to take that into account. But a price at no time is not what is received. It is an exchange, okay? And so these are the service outputs, all right? These 6. And as I said before, price is not one of these. Information sharing, if you were to see in a test question, I don't equivocate because it makes it hard for students. Information sharing is the most important, all right? But all of them are vital. And just remember, this is all things being equal. We tend to be able to get greater value when the market segment delivers them service outputs in a way that we believe is important. Okay, we're done. We will finish chapter 2 on Thursday. And I hope you all have a good day.